horologically grained and polished finishes or surfaces. Most of the components in horology require finishing or refinishing are quite small. Edges can be readily finished with the work held in a vise, and flat surfaces are best finished by holding the work in the hand and moving it across a brace of paper fastened to a flat surface. This is underhand polishing. As an example, this section will focus on the finishing of a brass click suitable for a clock in a restoration. Basic rules. The only way to get a good graining and polishing is to practice, practice, and practice. The following are some of the techniques to use. Flatness with square corners is essential. Abrasive and polishing papers must always be stuck to a wood or metal slip or a glass plate for underhand polishing. Self-adhesive wet or dry papers are available, or double-sided sellotape can be used as an alternative method to fasten abrasive paper to a glass sheet. Self-adhesive 3M micro-finishing papers are preferable to purchasing the non-adhesive paper and using double-sided sellotape. The work should be filed accurately to size, and do not expect to significantly change the dimensions by using abrasives. These are just to remove the very, very fine file scratches. Before commencing with any abrasives, ensure that any blemishes, i.e. scratches, have been removed with a small or the finest file possible. And file marks are as fine as possible, and then they must readily be removed by abrasive papers. Usually, it will be possible to just use 1200 grit, but sometimes 600 grit will be necessary. At each stage, rub across the previous grain so you can see the scratches from the previous grain which have been removed. Always use a raking light, by the way. For brass, you can use Brasso or polishing paste, such as Autosol, after you have used 1200 grade paper. For steel, it is easier to continue using the 3M micro finishing paper down to approximately 10 microns or less before using Autosol polishing paste or aluminum oxide powder. For hardened steel, Autosol polishing paste has little effect, almost totally ineffective. You will need to use 3 micron dimetine with oil. Finishing the edges. Finishing means exactly what the word says. It does not mean removing metal to achieve the shape which is required. All of the work to bring the component to size and the correct shape should be completed with a file first. Particular care should be taken to ensure that internal corners are sharp by using a file with a ground safe edge. Abrasive papers cannot produce a sharp internal corner. Although a finish may appear quite coarse, file marks can quickly be removed using 1200 grit wet or dry paper. The abrasive paper should be fastened to a polisher, which is essentially a piece of metal shaped like a barrette. This barrette needle file is ideal. The thin edges will reach into corners. A strip of thin steel, metal, or plastic could be used, but it should preferably be a hard, rigid material. Use double-sided sellotape to secure the abrasive to the needle file, and trim using a sharp X-Acto-type knife so that the abrasive reaches exactly to the edges you desire. If you're using micro-finishing film, the same procedure will apply. The polisher is used as a very fine file to remove the file marks which are present. It can be used both across the surface or in draw filing. One objective is to maintain flat surfaces and sharp corners at all times. It is best not to press heavily because the abrasive and sellotape sandwich is slightly soft and the pressure will increase the tendency to round corners. If a grain surface is required, This can be achieved using abrasive paper in the manner described, but you must ensure that the grain is exactly parallel to the edge. A finer surface can be gained by finishing with Gariflex, a rubberized block impregnated with abrasive. There are several trade names for Gariflex. There are 3 grades of the finest will achieve a fine-grained sheen. The Gariflex block can be cut with a knife to produce a sharp corner that can reach into internal corners. It is important to recognize that Gariflex is only for final finishing. More than just a few strokes will quickly round corners of any style. If the surface to be polished, there is need to remove scratches from 1200 grit paper, abrasive paper to leave a surface with a mirror finish. A finer grade, wet or dry paper can be purchased. 2500 grit or grade paper or micro finishing papers can be used. Alternatively, you can continue immediately with Brasso or Autosol or any other finishing paste. Again, a polisher is required to apply the Brasso or polishing paste. Pegwood, sharpened to provide a flat surface, will prove suitable, or balsa wood can be used lightly. The polishing compound becomes slightly embedded in the surface of the polisher, and this could be the wood or cloth, transforming it into a very fine file. Just as mentioned previously, the polisher should be used at right angles so that it is clear when the grain from the previous abrasive has been removed completely. It is usual to finish by draw filing so that any remaining grain is parallel to the edges of the work.